lots of you here today. And we're welcoming this afternoon Charlie Danger, who is an occupational therapist and works in the assistive technology area. He has come to us today to speak about something called Google Action Blocks. And I was just trying to remember, Charlie, when we first were made aware of this, and I'm sure it was one of your tweets a wee while ago actually, that we saw that you had posted to Twitter of a little video of some of the ways that you were thinking about using it to support the people who you're working with. So we're really thrilled that you can be with us here today. Thanks very much for coming along. Charlie's going to speak for about 20 minutes or so, and then there'll be 10 minutes for any questions at the end. Just remember, as ever with these webinars, they're being recorded and you'll be able to view them on the Call YouTube channel once they're uploaded, and that usually happens the following day. So you'll be able to go back and have a look at it again. So I'm going to hand over to Charlie, who has just returned to his PC, and we'll look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thanks very much, Charlie.
Right, hi everybody. First of all, can I just check that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, and you can see my slides. There's a picture of me with this cute little dog and
Yeah,
everything.
that's very cute.
Great, okay, perfect. Right, yes, so I'm here to talk about action blocks, which has been around for a few years. I don't really know how long it's been around really, because last year it made the news because they sort of did a deal with Tobii Dynavox and they brought PCS symbols into the program, and so that's when I started tweeting about it. So basically I'm just going to introduce you to that. Yes, as mentioned, I'm an occupational therapist by background. I've been working in assistive technology since the 90s, and I particularly get involved in AAC, which is why I've got a master's in language and communication impairments for children. Two seem to go quite well together, and I spend my week mostly at the Children's Trust and also a centre for a day a week in CEMMAC as well, where I recently started. If you ever want to get hold of me, there's lots of different ways, but probably the best is through my Twitter handle if you use Twitter. And then I just want to confirm that I do mention products during this session and during the demo, and I don't have any commercial affiliation with Google or Tobii Dynavox or any other companies that will come up. Okay, so obviously onto action blocks now. I'll just go forward. So I don't know if any of you have seen what action blocks looks like. I'll show you a picture of it in a minute, but first of all I'm going to describe the features, and so perhaps you can imagine what it's going to look like. First of all, it's free, so I don't know what you're imagining so far. Second of all, it has a familiar grid and cell design that we use quite often in AAC and in other types of assistive technology. It uses images and symbols. The symbols are the Tobii Dynavox PCS symbols that I mentioned earlier on. It can speak, so it's kind of getting a real vibe to be a sort of communication aid, but also it initiates, that's the only word I could think of to describe this, Google Assistant commands. And those Google Assistant commands are the things that you say when you're talking to a Google Assistant, which are similar to the ones that you use when you're talking to an Alexa. And those Google Assistant commands either work on device, so for example, sending a text message, making a phone call, taking a photograph, or they work in environmental control, so they'll turn on and off your lights, open your curtains, play music. Or you can use Google Assistant routines, which are a combination of the two, or just a whole series of different commands, one after another. And I'll give you some examples of that in a little bit. Oh, yes, and it only works on Android. And this is actually quite important because when we think about communication aids, especially, pretty much it's either Windows for dedicated devices or an iPad. And people often contact me and say, what's available for Android? And this is one of the big things that's available for the Android system. I should point out with Android that in the UK and the US, I think iPads and other Apple products are still the most popular, but around the world, Android is by far the most popular because it's a lot cheaper. You can go to Argos, I think, and buy an Android phone for about £40, whereas the cheapest iPhone is, you know, a lot more than that, at least 10 times as much. Okay, so what does action block look like? So this is the kind of the mainstream action blocks here. So here's somebody holding a phone, Android phone, and we've got this, let me get my laser pointer. We've got this morning alarm, so that probably sets like an alarm. We've got this thing that says call Kennedy. I presume that's a friend and not the Kennedy Space Center. We could play some music, turn on bedroom lights, and then there's this emergency text option. So that's kind of what Google kind of assumes it's going to look like. But through the magic of animation, this is kind of what I've made mine look like. So what I've got here is I've got a load of PCS symbols, and then I've also got some well, album cover art, for example. So I'll take you through what each one of these buttons does. Grupo 5, Peruvian band, that will play me my favorite Grupo 5 tunes. The bedroom button has got a picture of a fan, so it will turn on my bedroom fan. The bedroom light button will turn on my bedroom light. This is all done through Google Nest or the Google Smart Home System. If I press this little country music icon, it'll start playing country music, hip hop, etc. Call mum, it will just call mum up. Call a taxi, it will call a taxi, and then cat toy will set off an accessible cat laser toy or other accessible toy for the cat. Okay, so these are the sorts of examples of things that you can use with it. The other thing you can do, which works especially well on a tablet, is turn it into a pretty much a full-fledged communication aid. So here what I've got is I've got an old Android tablet, which I've got around somewhere. This tablet probably you could buy secondhand for about 40 or 50 pounds, I guess, and it's from 2015, and I've put on here the quick core vocabulary, or I've adapted slightly the quick core vocabulary that's in open board format from Cough Drop. You have to make it from scratch, so you can't just import the boards. And I've also added a little greetings section up here where it says hello, and there's a excuse me, I'd like to say something button. And then over here we've got two buttons, one's to make the voice quieter and one's to make the voice louder. But other than that, we've just got core vocabulary in a familiar grid. Okay, and this is free. The PCS symbols are freely provided. The software is free. The software is called Action Blocks, and it's recognizable by this really peculiar happy little icon. Some of you may have noticed on this slide and the previous slide that because we've got these buttons down here, especially Android users will recognize that this thing here where the cells are appearing is actually your desktop, you know, your home page on your phone. So rather than this being an app which is separate to the rest of the phone, it actually sits right on that first page, which is a bit peculiar. It's a little bit like opening up a Windows laptop and using the icons on your desktop as a communication aid. It's a strange system they've come up with, but it does kind of work, and it's free, so you know. So it seems really great, but we might need to think about what Action Blocks doesn't do. What doesn't Action Blocks do? Well, one thing Action Blocks doesn't do is it doesn't do a message bar. So the message bar is at the top of a typical communication aid, and as you construct your message, it will send the symbols to the top, and then you can speak them aloud. Action Blocks doesn't have that option. You can speak, but you speak one symbol at a time. You can't link cells. You can't link to pages from cells. So you couldn't press on clothing, for example, and then it goes to a clothing page. The only thing you can do is swipe left and right between pages in the same way that most people would do with Go Talk Now, where to change pages you swipe, although you can link cells and Go Talk Now, but that's a different thing. But so you swipe between the pages. You're also restricted to 8 pages because that's what Google offers you as far as the home page in Google goes. However, you don't have to use Google's interface on Android phones. You can use someone else's, and so I don't know what the limit of the number of pages would be on another one, but maybe there are some unlimited ones, but then it might start slowing down your phone or tablet. You can't save and transfer your stuff across, which means that once you've set it up for one young person, you basically, or whoever, you'd have to start from scratch for someone else. The caveat indicated by my little asterisk is that you can, if you're taking one phone and building a new phone from it. So if you back up one phone with everything on it and restore it to a new one, it will take Action Blocks across, but otherwise there's no way of transferring it across to new people. The PCS that's available is only the classic PCS, so there's no thin line and there's no CVI, the high contrast PCS that's really useful. So you're kind of stuck just using the regular PCS symbols, but there's still thousands of them there. And then a big one, there's only two voices. One is an English male and one is an English female. As far as I can tell, they both have American accents. There may be ways around that if you set up a phone completely or a tablet completely in a different country with everything in a different language. Perhaps it will speak in a different voice. I'm not sure. Perhaps somebody who's attending this session will be able to confirm at the end. So they're the kind of the limits of action blocks. Oh yeah, and the only other thing I missed off the bottom of the list there is I can't really get it to work with switch scanning. You can kind of get it to work, but cognitively it's really because you have to scan through each item twice, and it's nothing compared to switch scanning on a normal communication aid. Okay, so very briefly before I show it to you, I'll just go through the other options that you might be wanting to think about if you're going to go for this. So Action Blocks is free and it works as a communication aid, and it also allows environmental control through Google Assistant, and it also allows you to do in-device activities or shortcuts to those activities through Google Assistant. Alternative options available for you for Android are Cough Drop, which is about $200, or you can pay $6 a month. And then if you want PCS symbols, it's an extra $25. But there's no Google Assistant feature. So if you wanted to use Google Assistant stuff, you'd have to get a Nest Mini speaker and then have the tablet speak to the Nest Mini, and the Nest Mini would react. Or you could use the other Google smart speakers. It's just the Nest Mini is the cheapest. Obviously, then that's only going to work in the room where that Nest Mini is, and you often have to get quite close unless you use an external Bluetooth speaker. So there are other options. Another similar thing to Cough Drop is Seaboard. Seaboard is completely free, and it's quite similar to Cough Drop, but it's missing most of the features. It's pretty basic, but it allows you to bring in open format boards, and it works on Android. And then there's Asterix Grid, which is also free, and you can also bring in those open format boards from Cough Drop, so that includes core vocabulary and stuff like that, and it will also work with Google Assistant if you're using an external Google speaker, and again it's free. But and then just to mention, if you're going to go into the full price version, if you get an iPad, the only application that works with Google Assistant built in, which I'll demonstrate the benefits of in a minute, is TD Snap, which was called Tobii Dynavox Snap and Call First. It's now called TD Snap. This obviously has PCS symbols because Tobii Dynavox own PCS symbols, and it also has Google Assistant built in. In fact, the fact that it has Google Assistant built in is why Google has access to the PCS symbols. So I think that's part of the deal. And TD Snap's actually quite cheap at £54, but the iPads tend to be quite expensive. That's the rub. Anyway, so that's the context of what the alternatives are, which is I think it's worth knowing about. Back to the Google Action Blocks. This is the last slide, and then I'm going to demonstrate it to you. So just to clarify, each cell, each one of those squares with a picture in on Google Action Blocks either speaks aloud, which means it's acting as a communication aid, or it speaks aloud to itself and follows the command, so sending a text message or turning on and off the lights or whatever, or it silently speaks to itself and does those things. So it's a bit peculiar. This is not how you would normally set up a computer or a device that does something. You wouldn't normally have speech as your main input, but it's because it uses Google Assistant. So it's like a communication aid built into itself, where it's talking to itself, where it can do it silently, which is very strange, but it does actually work when you come to use it. And then every cell either looks like a symbol, and you can use PCS or action block symbols. There's hardly any action block symbols. There's only about 16 of them, I think. Or you can use a photograph from your camera, from Google Photos or Google Drive, or you can use an emoji that scales quite nicely, or you can just have text. You can have text with the symbols and the images as well, and the emojis, of course. You can combine those. Okay, right. Now, live demonstration time. So hopefully, if I press this thing, you should see, there we go. So you should all see my phone on my screen. Can somebody just confirm that they can see it?
Yep, that's there.
Great. Okay. So this is my Pixel 4a 5G, but I've also got this 2015 tablet that it works fine on as well. This does not use a lot of computing power. Okay. So on my front screen, you can see this is just, so on Google you get several pages if you're not used to Android. So these are my pages. And this really is just the front screen of my phone. This is me. If I turn my phone off, that's it turned off. If I turned it on, that's it coming on. So it works really easily. And I've got some simple things on there. Now, what I'm going to do is I could operate this with my hand, my phone, but I'm going to use the mouse so that you can hopefully see what I'm doing more easily. So if I press the yes button.
Yes.
Could you hear that? Yes.
Yes, yes, we could.
Perfect. Okay. And then we've got
No.
no, and I've got an
Excuse me, I have something to say. Hello, my name is Charlie.
My feeling as far as application goes, that a lot of people would have a robust communication aid somewhere, but this is just another real quick way of getting started. So for example, if you didn't have a universally understood yes/no response, then having yes/no on a device which could speak for you really quickly would be a really good thing. Or if you wanted to say something to somebody and you're holding your phone, you are holding your phone, you could just say,
excuse me, I have something to say,
whilst you get your robust communication aid ready, because people are then more likely to wait. Okay, right. The other things I've got on here are these routines, morning routine and bedtime routine. So the morning routine will do a whole series of things, and the bedtime routine will also do a whole series of things. And you just stack them together. So if I press the morning routine, off it will go doing its stuff.
good morning. Have a nice day.
Okay, so in that good morning routine, it told me that it was sunny and to have a nice day, which was nice. If there was traffic on my way to work, it would warn me about the traffic. And the other thing that it would do that you can't see, I also don't have the technology here at home, but it would turn on my lights and maybe turn on the radio. It will also alert me if my phone is low on battery. So it does a whole stack of different things. Okay, we've also got, we go forward, things like this thing where I can call my mum. This isn't my mum, this is Dame Judy Dench. We've got a flip a coin option. So I'll press the flip a coin option.
You got tails.
Okay. I should point out every time I test that, I always get tails. So that's interesting. I will go back. I've got this option for calling a taxi. So that will automatically call a taxi. Or I can press where I live and it will tell the person where I live.
I live at 50 Pretend Avenue.
So some of these are just communication aid cells with phrases in.
I live at 50 Pretend Avenue.
Whereas these ones, like flip a coin, are cells that tell the phone to do something. Shout also tells the phone to do something. It will raise the volume up to 10.
Turn volume to 10.
So it will make it really loud. Okay, this thing down the bottom is the Google Assistant coming up, and you just tap out of it and it goes away again. Okay, I've got things like telling jokes. I've got take a selfie. I might try to take a selfie now. So I just tap on that with my finger. There you go, done. And then I've got my little selfie. Thank you. Thank you, Google. Okay. Or if I want to watch a cat video, I can watch a cat video. Or if I want to turn the torch on, and there the torch is on. You should be able to see that in my video. And I can turn the torch off again. Off again. Okay. Ooh, so it does quite a lot of different things. As well as communicating, it will control the stuff in my home, and it will also allow me to access things on the phone that would normally be hidden under menus, which I might not be able to physically manipulate. Or it might be because maybe I've got a learning disability, it might be difficult for me to navigate some parts of the phone. So these are all like shortcuts to parts of to things that are going on in the phone, but also shortcuts to things that are going on in my environment, and are also things that I want to say. So it kind of does lots of different stuff. Right, now I'm going to quickly show you how to make these things in my remaining couple of minutes. So if I open the Action Blocks app, I'll just do that again. Let me go back. So I've just got a link to the Action Blocks app down here. So I'll click on that. And these are all the blocks that I've made. Okay. So if I were to remove some from my home screen, if I remove the yes and the no. Okay. So if I've already got the action blocks stored and I want to use them or reuse them, I can just grab the yes like this and click on place on home screen, and it just tells me add your action block to the home screen to access with one tap. Once it's on your home screen, you can resize it and reposition it. Okay, don't show this message again. And then I've got an option to cancel or add to home screen, and then it just confirms pretty much what it just said. Thank you. And now if I go back to my home screen, there it is. It's put it at the end. It always goes to the end. So if I want to move it back to the beginning, I pick it up and I just toddle along like this through these pages. So it's a little bit like Go Talk Now, and then I can just resize it to fit in there like that. Okay, so that's how you move things around or add things in. If I wanted to make a cell from scratch, then what I'll do is I'll delete the, I will delete the no. So I'm just going to go to delete there. Delete. Okay, so to make one from scratch, I would go, let's say I wanted a no button here. I go into my action blocks, and there's a big blue bar at the bottom here that says create action block. Sounds good. Press that. And then it basically has a few examples of playing music, playing video, sending like an emergency text message, starting a video call, or making a phone call. I want to say something out loud. So basically all your AAC you'd go down to say something out loud. So I click on that, and it has a few examples, just these 5 little examples. So handily enough, I want that example. So I'm going to do no. It's going to fill it in for me. The voice is basically female or male. Voice 2 is male, voice 1 is female. So now if I press next, it asks me to test it. So if I press test,
No.
just says the word no. So press next. And then underneath the action block, I can give it a label like no. It's already selected the PCS symbol for me. Save action block, add to home screen, click OK on that message that always comes up. And then if I go back to my home, whoop, if I scroll along, you should see my no there. Whoop. So now I'm going to pan back and pop it there, and then do this. Okay. The the other icons, such as, for example, taking a selfie, are a little bit more complicated, or turning on, but not much. All you do is you let me, for example, I'll delete the torch one. Delete the torch one. Delete. Okay. So to do a torch one, it's the same thing as you use for if you want to express a message as a to say something. You go through the same process. You go to create action block, but instead of saying something out loud, you go create custom action, and then you type in the thing that you would say to your phone if you were using Google Assistant, or it's the same thing that you would say to your Google Assistant Nest if it had a torch. And in fact, I can press this little microphone to say it out loud instead of typing it in, which will save me time. Turn on the flashlight. Okay, and then I click next. It asks me if I want to test it. I'm going to skip the test to save time. Go to my image, and then here I can choose whether it's a PCS symbol or one of the few action block symbols, or I can go to my Google Drive or my Google Photos to get something out there. I'm going to go to PCS, and then I'm going to type in flashlight, because this is an American system. And then I should see, if I press the search button, a torch, and then I could put turn torch on and click the tick and save action block, add to home screen, click OK on this message, always comes up, and then hopefully we should see in there, my turn torch on is here, and if I press that, let's just check it works.
Turn on the flashlight.
Turn on the flashlight. Flashlight comes on, and then I'll turn it off again to save my battery. Okay, whew. There you go. That's a whistle-stop tour of action blocks. I will stop sharing my screen now and open it up to any questions that you might have.
That was fantastic, Charlie. Thanks very much. What a brilliant tool. And like you say, just so many ways you can see it would be useful, not just for AAC, but those environmental control things, or having quick access to pieces of music for kind of this whole self-regulation thing as well. Really useful. Couple of questions in the chat. I see John's just asking about, you said it was a bit tricky with the switch scanning, and he's asking what particular issues were there?
Right, so if I'm using, say, TD Snap, for example, and I'm scanning, then I'm only going to scan the cells that I want to scan. So I'm only going to scan through the the vocabulary buttons, the buttons that have actions, and the speak button. I'm not going to end up scanning through the rest of the iPad control, if you see what I mean. Whereas with Android, as you're scanning around, you're also going to be scanning through the other options. So you're going to have to scan through those other icons on the bottom. You're going to have to scan through a menu system that it has on the top. So first of all, a lot of it you're going to have to scan through other stuff other than action blocks. And then the second thing, when you scan through the action blocks, you have to scan each one twice. There may be a way around that, but as far as I can tell, you only you have to scan each one twice. So cognitively, it's pretty demanding. It's possible, it's feasible. It's just you know, at least double the amount of scans that's required.
Yeah, so it's a sort of tool that you'd be using only for someone in terms of switch access who's a really competent, confident switch scanner to kind of reliably get through, and maybe not the most efficient method of accessing things either if you've got to go through all those other menus.
Exactly. Yeah. You'll probably find it a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
However, it does mean that you've constantly got access to all the other menus. So if you're somebody who scans through Android on a regular basis anyway, having those buttons on the having those shortcut buttons on the desktop, as it were, actually would be really useful.
Okay.
Um, I should say as well, there is also you may have seen it in the demo, there is an option to connect any of those action blocks with a switch. I haven't been able to get that to work, and I know some other AT specialists haven't been able to get it to work either. Certainly not reliably. I've tried it on Android 11 and Android 12 and not made any progress, but if anybody else has managed it, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Another question here. So someone's asking, saying, given the popularity of Android devices, it's surprising that there aren't more AAC apps. Why do you think that is?
That's a very good question. I think the main reason is because Android is really fragmented. So I've got Android 12 on my phone, but anybody else who hasn't got a Google Pixel phone would have Android 11. And if you go and buy a cheaper device, or you go to other countries, some countries in lower middle income countries where they rely on cheaper devices, they might have Android versions as low as 6 or 7. And in order to get your application to work on all of those Android versions would be a nightmare. It'd be impossible. So I think it's just because iPads and iPhones tend to stick to one version.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Just a practical question. Do you have a copy of that presentation you could share with us that we could send to people? Someone earlier in the chat was asking if you had a copy of that, so we can maybe organise that with you. At some stage. Yeah,
of course, I'll send that to you, Claire.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And just another question about availability of action blocks in terms of Android OS versions. John's just asking, is it available with earlier ones?
Oh yeah, so I can't. So this is exactly the problem. I can't quite remember. But my 2015 tablet hasn't been updated since 2016, I think. So certainly, if you go back 5 years, it still works. So I mean, KitKat version 4, it's not going to work on. But I think if you've got anything in the last 5 or 6, 7 years, it will work. I can't tell you exactly.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So someone's using it with Android 10 on an original Pixel, and it's working well with that. So that's good to know as well. Thanks for that, Sandy. Super. Well, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Charlie, for all that information. Really nice, clear demonstration as well of how it works. So
Great.
Thank you very much for coming along today, and thanks for all your questions, folks, and joining us. Just a wee reminder that we're back again next Wednesday. We're back to iOS next week. We've had Android this week, iOS next week, and Dave Stevens is going to be talking about iPad apps for learners with complex needs. So please do come and join us if you can. And thanks very much to everyone for being here today. Afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.